Thank you, Danielle. Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, cool. All right. Hi, my name is Erica Anderson. I'm with the Google News Lab, and I'm here to talk about there's good news and bad news, what's next in journalism. By the way, do I have a clicker? Oh, that'd be good. So I've worked at the intersection of journalism and tech for the last 10 years, and this is what gets me up in the morning. What is journalism's obligation to truth? Its mission is to inform and empower people, and it's something I care deeply about. So I read a book recently by Virginia Heffernan. She's a New York Times media critic. She has a PhD from Harvard, and she wrote this book called Magic and Lost: The Internet as Art. And I was kind of skeptical. I didn't know where she would land on the internet. But I have to say I was quite inspired by the way she painted the new world and the new opportunities, and in some way, the pyramids that our generation is building. And in response to her employer's comment, the New York Times, "Did Twitter kill poetry?" she said this: "Asking what's to become of poetry in the age of Twitter is asking what's to become of music in the age of guitars." I absolutely love this lighthearted, optimistic approach to the internet, and especially the acknowledgement that old art forms can come anew in the age of the internet. Because journalism, to me, is an art form. So 10 years ago, I graduated from journalism school with literally no tech experience, but I was desperate to break into an industry that so many people were of the opinion was breaking apart. I knew two things. One, I would definitely find a way in, and two, I would do it as my authentic self. And both things happened. I came out, and then I got a job with MTV News covering the '08 election as a citizen journalist. I got to go to CBS News and help some of their talent understand social media in the early days. I went to Twitter and helped them start their news division back in 2010, and now I'm at Google. So the core philosophy of my work and what drives me is this idea of bridging old and new media and closing the gap between the two. So I would say that traditional values of journalism are more important than ever: trust, verification, accuracy, independence, and monitoring power. But as Heffernan reminded me, the new values are so important and critical to figuring out the path forward. These values of authenticity, building your own audience, proximity, personal proximity to an issue, and having credibility not in spite of it, but because of it. Mindfulness, action, and versatility. And it's because of these values we have new stars and new journalists like Liz Plank of Vox. She got her master's in gender studies and is a total force on the election trail this year. Shaun King, a Black Lives Matter activist, a former pastor, now a criminal justice reporter at the Daily News. These are folks whose voices and journalistic talents have been brought to light and made possible because of the internet. So Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. And at the heart of that mission is the belief that a more informed and a more connected world leads to better outcomes. And it's hard to argue, or at least I would argue, that some of the most important forms of information is quality news content. So the team that I work on is called the Google News Lab, and it's our mission to collaborate with journalists and technologists to build the future of media. It's a pretty big goal. But there are four areas that we focus on, four challenge areas that we think the news industry is facing. The first is trust and verification. The second is data journalism, which we think is a big opportunity, immersive storytelling, and of course, diversity. And the way that we tackle these efforts is kind of a mixed bag. We do coalition building, we do partnerships, we build new products and use technology, and we also do a bit of grant giving. So I want to give you a few examples of what we do and why this matters and how it integrates with the tech piece of this. So we started something called First Draft Coalition. This is a group of journalists that give social news gathering guidance and verification, advice, and training to journalists around the world. And I'll give you an example of what that is and why it matters. You guys have probably all seen photos shared through social media, and you're like, oh my gosh, is that really Baltimore under flames last year during the riots and the protests? And someone actually fact-checked this journalist who uploaded this on Facebook using Google reverse image search. and found that this photo was actually not from Baltimore, but had been posted to the internet about 6 years ago from a riot in South America. Here's another example of what First Draft does. This is a photo of a missile launcher that a Twitter user posted with coordinates of where this was in Russia. Now, it's not just any missile launcher. This is actually, supposedly, the missile launcher that was used to shoot down Malaysian Flight 17 over Ukraine. So the journalist, the investigative journalist, wanted to verify the coordinates. Verification is key. So he used Google Street View. And he took the original photo, and then he put the coordinates into Street View, and he was able to identify markings in the original photo and confirm that they were in fact the same markings that exist in that location on Street View. So a tiny detail, but a critical part of his story in helping to understand the way this missile launcher was being moved through Russia. So data journalism is another big focus for us. Now, data without numbers, or data without context is just a bunch of numbers. So we work with journalists to help them use Google Trends data, which is an enormous data set that we make available through google.com/trends, to understand cultural phenomenons and shifts in attitudes to inform their journalism. Here's an example. This is Rafia Zakaria. She's an American Muslim journalist. She just came out with a piece last week, really trying to understand how the situation of violence in America, political rhetoric, and the campaign has impacted our understanding or the conversation of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim rhetoric. So she used Google Trends. This is a map, a chart of the rates of Islamophobia, searches for Islamophobia, searches for kill Muslims, mapped against the time of different attacks in America, different acts of violence. So you see spikes after San Bernardino, after Orlando. Immersive storytelling. So who here's watched some VR? And yeah, hopefully we have some. Yeah, cool. So like a year and a half ago, Cardboard was launched, and the New York Times did this amazing piece called Displaced, and everyone in the journalism community was so excited to figure out how to do VR and even AR to help bring people into stories. On the News Lab team, we realized there are massive barriers to entry for journalists and news organizations, from small to big. There's ethical challenges, there's cultural challenges, there's technical challenges. So true to what we did with First Draft, we launched something called Journalism 360. Very similar effort in that we're building a coalition of journalists who are in the field, of technologists who are in the field. We're focusing on knowledge sharing, of sharing case studies on Medium, information, Q&As, what went wrong on that piece. We're giving grants out in 2017 for journalists with great ideas that will advance the understanding of immersive storytelling. And if you're interested, please fill out this form and let us know. So diversity is our last and probably one of the most important things that we're working on right now, and I'm glad to be talking about it today. To be frank, when you look at the changes in the country, in the United States, and the makeup of the United States, and how much it has changed in the last 20, 30, 40 years, 10 years, frankly, we don't think newsrooms reflect that. So how do we, as the News Lab, a small team, how do we help journalists and newsrooms become more diverse and more representative? We're doing a few things. We're going in and partnering with organizations like NABJ and NAHJ to train journalists on skills that can make them more competitive. But we're also open to other ideas and figuring out how to build programs like I just described in the slides before. All right, so I'm going to bring it back. Has Twitter killed poetry? So to steal or to borrow Virginia's words, I would just end it as this. Asking what's to become of journalism in the age of Google is like asking what's to become of lesbians in the age of the internet. Sure, there will be a few bad haircuts, but in the end, we will all thrive. Thank you so much.